So we are on Mishnah 8. So it says, Asra Devarim Nivra'u Be'er Shabbat Ben Hashmashot. That these were 10 things that were created at twilight, right, in between on Erev Shabbos. Right, those moments that aren't fully weekday, but they aren't fully Shabbos yet. Right? Ve'elohen, and these are them. So you have to first recognize that the creations of the 6 days, the first 6 days, are all things that require man to help perfect them. All things that exist in the world, all physical things, are created imperfect, and they require the action of man to bring them to perfection. Right? We talked about that before when we talked about Bris Milah. Right? The battle between the Tinius Rufus, Turnus Rufus, and Rabbi Akiva, between the Jews and the Greeks, is man and nature, is it immutable? Is it perfect? Is it done? Right? Or is it perfectible? Right? And we hold that it's perfectible. The difference is, if it's perfectible, that means you got to get in and perfect it. Right? If you consider that it's perfect, which doesn't mean that it's interesting in their model, doesn't mean it's ideal. It just means it's unchangeable. It means there's nothing I can do about it. It's not my problem. Right? The world is what the world is. That says everything that was created in the first 6 days are all things that are self-reproductive. Right? They're things that have continuity, existence on their own. I mean, rocks just are rocks. Right? We've talked about, plants have, reproduction, animals have reproduction, emotion, but they're all self-reproductive. They're designed for constant reproduction from the original prototypes. That there's a continuity to physical creation. That helium gas will, hydrogen gas will coalesce and it'll become a star, and eventually it'll burn up and it'll supernova and it'll make carbon and that'll seed. Right? Everything in the physical universe just runs. It's made to operate and be self-reproductive, but it requires man to perfect it. Those are the things of the first 6 days. These 10 things will not be reproduced. The 10 things that we're going to do are not things that have continuity. They will not have descendants. They will not come from anything, nor will anything come from them. They will not be another generation of a talking donkey. Right? The talking donkey shows up once, does its job, and it's done. These things also need no input from man to rectify them to God's will. Everything else in the universe, in order to come to serve Hashem, has to be changed by man. Right? A chicken does a perfectly good job of walking around in a chicken yard, but it doesn't become a Shabbos chicken until a person shechs it, and your wife cooks it, and puts a little bit of paprika and pepper and lemon juice, and bakes it, and makes it a Shabbos chicken, or whatever your favorite recipe is. But it takes the input of man. The things of nature take the input of man to become holy. These are 10 things that have no prototype, have no reproduction, have no successor, and don't require any input from man. Right? This is all the Chassid Yavitz explaining what these things are. That they're all created for a particular moment or moment in time or particular purpose. He also wants you to understand that miracles, Rabbi Topor says that miracles are not outside the natural order of things. Right? Though there are things that, most things, happen the way they're supposed to happen, miracles that happen are embedded in the system. Right? Any miracle that happens in some way, God has built in the potential for that miracle to happen. Right? I mean, theoretically, we're used to entropy. Right? All the molecules in this room, they average out, that they spread out through the room. But theoretically, there's nothing against the law of nature that says that coincidentally, just on the path of all the bouncing of all the molecules, that all the oxygen molecules bounce up to that corner, right? And the rest of them was just filled with nitrogen and carbon dioxide and junk, right? I mean, we would all suffocate and die, but right? But there's nothing that would prevent it. It's built into the right, keeping for the Red Sea to split. Right? For all the things that we see as miracles are built into the nature of the world, and those things that are one-offs like these, it says that there's this idea of the Bein HaShemashim, that there's a moment between creation and the end of creation that God had a place to work those in. So these are 10 things. All of these 10 things, these miraculous creations, are somehow rooted in an ethical consideration. Right? So the first one is the mouth of the earth. Right? So where are we? 10 things were created at the Sabbath Eve. Pi ha'aretz. Remember the mouth of the earth? And the mouth of the earth is one that swallowed Korach. Right? Korach gets in this fight. You're in trouble when Moshe says to you, listen, there's an easy way to settle this. If you're right, you will just die of natural causes right now. And if you're wrong, then you will die in a totally miraculous way that nobody has ever seen. Right? The first thing you should hear from that is, if we step forward, I'm dying. Right? It's a good chance to say, you know what? Sorry, I made a mistake. Right? But he says, listen, this is not a fight between you and me. This is a fight between you and God, and we'll prove it. If you're wrong, then God will do something new. And the mouth of the earth will open up, swallow you up, and you're done. Right? That doesn't happen. The idea that the earth just goes bloop, sucks the person down, closes them up. It's counter to nature. It doesn't happen before. It didn't happen after. So the idea is that it's this concept, this don't slander God, don't rebel against God. But the idea is that wickedness is punished. Right? God will intervene in the world to guarantee that wickedness is punished. That's the mouth of the earth. What's the mouth of the well? Piha Ba'er, right? So that's Miriam's well. Right? The Jews are walking through the desert for 40 years, and the well is following them. Right? The universe, the world gets recreated instantaneously to have this well follow them through. So that's the concept that virtue is rewarded. Right? We draw our sustenance from well. Torah is called water, but God intervenes to guarantee that the virtue of Miriam and the virtue of the Jewish people who are following him is rewarded. It would not make a lot of sense for the Jews to head out into the desert and all die of thirst. Right? We're following God, we're doing what we're supposed to do, so God has the capability of intervening to make it work. The fourth is the mouth of the donkey. Right? Story of Bilam. Right? Donkey looks at him and says, dude, what are you thinking? Right? The boss said not to go. It's the power of speech, but it's really that Hashem watches, right? That Hashem cares. That much as Bilam wants to go and curse the Jews, he says he can't do anything that God doesn't want him to do. That God is paying strict attention to here's the power I give you. It's this far and no farther. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can't do. And I'll make the donkey talk to you. That even in the life of a Bilam, that God will intervene and speak to him, right? That God's watching and paying attention and making sure that nothing happens outside of the course of what God's willing to have happen. The Keshet, the rainbow, right? So again, not necessarily the rainbow as we see it, but the first rainbow after the flood. But the concept of the rainbow, which is really that God has patience with human error. Right? That what was the rainbow? God, it's the model. He floods out everything, destroys everything. He rescues Noah, as we talked about in the Mishnah last week, and he puts his sign up in the heavens to say, "Listen, I'm going to cut you some slack from now on." Right? I prefer to look at the rainbow more like an Irishman and see it as a pot of gold and see it as something beautiful. But I recognize, with our model, the rainbow is a hint that the boss is not necessarily so happy with us. Right? But that he's exercising patience, that he'll intervene in the world to hold back the destruction that's possible to make sure that things work out for us. The next is mana. So the rainbow is patience on a global scale, that God works with, that he's willing to cut slack to an individual person. Mana shows that he shows individual care. That every person, when the mana fell, the mana that you were collected was exactly what you needed. It wasn't, if you needed 2 pounds of mana to feed you and your kids, you got 2 pounds. If you needed 3, you hadn't collected, you had 3. If you only needed 1.6, you only got 1.6. That we think that we have to struggle to make the world work for us, and it doesn't always work out. It says that the mana was a hint that God, he's paying attention to you, and he's giving you exactly what you need. He's not going to give you what I need. He's not going to give you what he needs. He's not necessarily going to give you what you want. Right? But how's the song go? Right? You won't always get what you want. But if you try sometime, you just might find that you get what you need. Right? The mana is there to give us the lesson that God will give you individually. Right? It's one of the hardest things for people to understand in the concept of God. You see, so many people want to see God as a celestial watchmaker. Either they see he doesn't exist, but people think there is a God. They say, so God made the universe and he's done with us. Right? The idea that God is paying attention to you. Right? The President of the United States isn't paying attention to you. The governor's not paying attention to you. The mayor's not paying attention to you. He might kind of, in the aggregate, pay attention to the teachers' union. But he's certainly not going to pay attention to you. Right? Who's got time? He's got a lot of stuff. He's got, billions of people to take care of. Who has time to pay attention to you? Mana is God is actually paying attention to you. He's big enough. Right? He has the bandwidth to pay attention to you personally and give you exactly what it is that you need when you need it. and not more, not less. The rod. So the rod is, Moshe goes in, and the rod turns into a snake. That Hashem will intervene, not just for sustenance like manna. Hashem will intervene to chastise man. Right? It also gives you a hint that even the Exodus, the Yetzias Mitzrayim, was planned from the beginning. Here he is on the 6th day, and he's putting the rod in place to make sure it's available for the Exodus. But as hard as it is to think that God will pay attention to you personally and give you what you need in the way of bracha, sometimes it's harder to accept and scarier to face that God will also reach into the world and give you a smack where you need it. Right? That the stuff that happens to you that doesn't feel so good, it's not random, it's not physical, it's not meat, it's the rod. It's God reaching into the world to give you a little bit of a claw because you need it. The next is a shamir. So shamir is interesting. The Jews were told to make a Beis Hamikdash, right, out of stone. Right? You see the Western Wall has stones that are 170 tons, right, 340,000 pounds stone, monster things. But you weren't allowed to cut them. How do you cut? You can't cut. How do you cut a stone if you can't use steel? Right? You can't use a chisel. You can't use any tool against it. So the shamir was whatever it was. It was basically some sort of worm that could crawl across stone, and the acids or whatever it was, it split the stone. The stone divided where it moved. So the idea is that God provides the tools to you. Marshall, He provides the tools to you that are necessary to do His will. Which is, again, a hard concept to get your mind around. That if God gives you a challenge, gives you a mission, gives you a mitzvah, gives you an obligation, you should know that it's like Captain Kirk on the planet when he's fighting that reptile guy. If you look around, you'll find the stuff necessary to make a bamboo bazooka, right? You don't necessarily recognize, but if you look, it's there. God will give you the shamir. Whatever you need in the world, if it's money or food or courage or time, it's there. You got to look for it. You got to find it. But God will not give you an obligation that you can't meet. He will not give you a challenge that you can't fulfill. Anything God assigns to you, He will make available the tools that you need to get it done. That's the lesson of Shamir. The writing, right, with the michtav and the stylus, right, the written characters and the writing itself, and the luchos. That He gives us His own language and His own script and the place to put it. The God wants to give us commandments. He wants to give us His rules, His Torah. He wants to tell the Jewish people, here's how I'm going to want you to run the world. Right? He wants to give us His instruction. But how do we get it? How do we hear it? How do we write it down? How do we hold on to it? Right? It says that He takes a piece of Himself, piece from the world of spirituality, the non-physical world, and He creates a language. A language is speech, or language is concepts and thoughts and ideas made manifest. That it's the concretization of ideas and ideals. That God doesn't make us flounder. He says, here's the words. He gives you a mission. Here's the idea and the concept and the wisdom. I'm going to give it all to you. All right? And I'm going to give you a script. I'm going to give you a way to record it, and a way to think it through, and a way to teach it, a way to make it real. And I'm going to give you luchos. I'm going to give you a physical place to embody it. Right? So in our own lives, it's like God's going to give you a goal, a mission, a mitzvah, an idea, a concept, a moral virtue, whatever. So He's going to give you language. He's going to give you the ability to shape that idea in your mind and understand it. That when you hear a real idea, right, a truth, that He gives you language. He gives you the ability to understand it. He gives you script. He gives you the ability to communicate it, and He gives you luchos, permanence, ability, a place to make sure that that's going to last. I saw a mashal said this is really with your own kids, right? We just had this question a second ago. It's like, you're raising kids. What are you going to do with them? How are you going to make sure you're spending your whole life working on building this whole value system and living this value system? How are you going to pass it on? You need language, right? You need script. You need luchos. He says, I've given it to you. I give you the ability to guarantee that you need to teach to your children and my children. You can teach. Just start. Right? Just tell your kid, right? Sing with her. Give her a holla. Make Shabbos seem fun. It's hard to figure out, like sometimes we overthink it, like, well, which college, which yeshiva, which, right? He's going to give you the language, he's going to give you the script, he's going to give you the luchot. You have to pour your heart into it. I want to give it to my kids. But he'll give you the vehicle. So those are the miraculous interventions. That the world basically runs itself. But God's going to make sure that wickedness is punished and virtue is rewarded, that Hashem watches, that He's patient, that He shows individual care both for the good and for the bad, that He will always give you the tools to do His will, right? And He will give you the vehicles necessary for you to make it continue to teach it. So live in the physical world, but in those last moments as He switched to Shabbos, He gave us the tools to make sure that we have the ability to pass it on. So that's the 10. So that's the end of the 10s. Right, now we move to the 7s.